when I won, I was up there. All the people are cheering. I've got the trophies and the swords. It felt so empty. And I'll never forget it because I had just starved myself and done 90 minutes of cardio every day and all the work that it took to get up there. And this was my third out of my fourth show. It was a natural show, the one that I had won. And I just never forget how weird it felt. And I knew, I was like, well, I knew it. I was like, this was, I don't know, I can't describe it, but it felt so empty. And after years have passed, for me, the takeaway was the art of becoming is truly being successful. So it's not about, once I get to this goal, I'll be happy. It's the happily achieving on the way to the goal. That is success. It's a feeling. It's not an external, like, woo, I won this trophy. Like, the trophy itself wasn't success. It was the feeling inside of me.
Hello, Megan. Welcome to the PCOS Oracle Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast and to be speaking with you. So I came across your Instagram page a while ago now, and I love the content and the message you're sharing, which center a lot around shifting away from the diet mentality, obsessively to exercise, and really learning to love your body. And in all honesty, I've been looking forward to our chat because what we'll be discussing today is so common. Body dysmorphia, restrictive eating, the fatigue of gaining weight, the need to earn your food through exercising and overexerting yourself is sadly so common. And it starts from a younger age and can continue on till later life. Unfortunately, in the world we currently live in, which is heavily reliant on social media, or the whole appearance, aesthetics, and promoting the daily grind and comparing ourselves to people online is, I don't know when it's going to ever end, or if it's just going to be like this constant thing that we just have to obviously deal with, and if we're going to ever learn to love our bodies and not consistently hate it and just continue chasing the perfection or what we believe to be perfection, probably never end. But when the diet and fitness industry is like $1 billion industry. So I just want to say I'm grateful to you for the information you share, for empowering so many people, and thank you for sharing your journey on the podcast and opening up about eating disorders and body image, etc. It's not easy. I know it's not easy to kind of open up about all this stuff. It can be a little bit like raw depending on how, when it happened and how you began healing, like the kind of duration. It can be quite an emotional kind of topic. So I appreciate you agreeing to discuss it on the show. Can you start sharing your fitness and health journey? And I know you competed in fitness competitions. So can you share that whole experience and then later on discuss what some of those repercussions of doing these fitness competitions and really going into severe restrictive diets and over-exercising can have, not only physically, but on that mental aspect as well?
Yeah, I thank you so much for all of that too, by the way. I have to say that, I've been a personal trainer and in the industry for 18 years, almost 18 years, 17 and a half. And it hasn't been until this last 2 years where I've gone through the eating disorder therapy and really learned more about the mindset and the psychological approach and how important that is as a coach to offer to my clients, and then for my own self, which I didn't have that when I was competing. It's helped me grow into the coach that I always wanted to be. So it's kind of with my clients, I talk about the power of contrast. When you experience something you don't like, it illuminates maybe what you do like or what you do want. And so it's really important to kind of honor the contrast, because now I feel like a wounded warrior. Like I picked myself up and I have a machete and I want to slash through some of the BS to help others not struggle or fall down as hard as I did. And so, I grew up, to talk about my health and fitness journey, I've always been active. I grew up doing swim team, soccer, ballet, tap and jazz, horseback riding, always being in my body. I was actually relatively overweight growing up. I felt very uncomfortable. I was teased a lot. Horseback riding, I couldn't pick myself up on the horse. I needed help. There was a lot of these little moments where I was teased in gym class, embarrassed to change in the locker room, all of those memories. And, you asked me later on, did I have an eating disorder prior to competing? or did competing give it to me? And honestly, I had an eating disorder in high school. Yeah. I took the ephedra pills. I skipped class to work out. I mean, go back when I was bullied, that's what motivated me. My first boyfriend, freshman year of high school, broke up with me because he wanted a prettier girlfriend. That's what he said. So I stopped drinking Coke, and I started running up and down my driveway, which I grew up in Virginia. It was like 0.3 of a mile. So it was a pretty decent run. And I started eating Smart Start cereal for breakfast and lunch. And I started making sure I only allowed myself to eat a certain amount of food during a certain window. And if I missed it, and this was before Google. So I wasn't Googling. I didn't have the internet influencing me, but I definitely had TV ads and magazines. And I'm sure any of us who grew up in the 90s and the 2000s can relate to what I was seeing, Spice Girls and all the really like that style of body and beauty as it was idolized then. So all through high school and even into college, I carried this disordered approach. So bodybuilding definitely exacerbated it. But to go back, as I was always active and not really feeling comfortable in my body, when I went to college, I was going to be a park and rec major, which is like park ranger. And that really wasn't my path. I took an intro to nutrition class and it hit me like a bag of bricks. While I was fearful and definitely disordered in eating, that was the beginning of saving myself, was learning about food, learning about carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, learning about how to properly fuel myself. And that's when I go, gosh, well, I probably don't know anything about exercising. So that's when I got my first personal trainer certification in 2005 while I was in college, just for myself. I didn't really think I was going to create a career. This was just because I was so obsessed with like staying skinny and I wanted to just have all the knowledge so I would just never become my worst fear, which was gaining weight. So, to be honest, I built my career based in fear. I just didn't really see it that way until, much later. I did find while I was in college the hula hoop, and I started hula hooping, and that was a really big gift because it wasn't driven by aesthetics. It didn't matter what I looked like unless I was like performing, I'd be in a costume, but it really was more about what my body can do, what my body is capable of, which is part of what we'll talk about later, body neutrality, how to celebrate our body. Why do we work out? So the hula hoop is definitely a big part of what kind of brought me out of some of that. And I've been hula hooping still for 17 years. So after college, I moved from Virginia to Portland, Oregon, because that's where you can hula hoop professionally on the West Coast. And that's where I had some friends that were already doing it. And I wanted to be with like-minded folks that weren't really in Virginia. So after college, I graduated, moved to Portland, Oregon, started hula hooping and fire dancing, and also working as a personal trainer. So like personal trainer by day and then circus performer by night. And it was really fun to do both of those. They really fed into each other, like teaching people how to dance and be playful, and then also teaching them how to be fit and like use dumbbells and stability balls and stuff like that at the gym. And so that's what I did for a long time, building my career, going through, I would say, like those more box gyms. And what really got me into bodybuilding was one of my clients at a boot camp like gym I was managing at the time. So it wasn't a one-on-one situation, but it was a small group training session. And she talked about how she wanted to compete. And I had always been interested. I had seen some of the bodybuilders at my gym job previous. And I was like, let's do it. Like she was doing it. And that's why I hopped on board. And it was really fun. There's a lot of cool aspects of doing something like that with a friend or doing it with community. Of course, you can plug in and make friends and cheer each other on. So there's definitely positive aspects about it. The personal trainer I was working with at the time said she could help me with the goal, and we went for it. But at the time, I was also really into an MLM company. It's embarrassing to say now, honestly, but I was replacing full meals with shakes. I was doing intermittent fasting and performing cleanse days for 24, 36, 48 hours. Already doing that prior to then preparing to go into a competition style prep. So I had no idea what I was already doing, like the extreme stress I was causing on my thyroid, adrenals, and liver. And when I look back, I cringe, and I think that would be like kind of the journey of like There's so much goodness about fitness. There's so much fun that you can do in the gym and so many reasons why you would want to become fit. But for some reason, the bodybuilding and fitness competition world has created an illusion that these people are health ambassadors in some way. And that's not true at all. I'm getting goosebumps talking about, like, many of bodybuilder competitors struggle with disordered eating, body dysmorphia, thyroid conditions. And for some reason, when we see them really lean and fit, men or women, we really idolize them. And that's the struggle I think we face right now with the fitness industry, is it's the aesthetic drive and who's been chosen to represent that, like, the goal look. So yeah, that's basically the sum of my journey. And then coming out of that, realizing there's so many reasons to stay in fitness. You just have to really work on the mindset approach of it. And I would say, as I look back, I wish I had a more qualified coach, like a very well-educated coach who understands the importance of nutrition periodization, which we'll talk about later. The importance, a coach that understands the impacts of drastic dieting, who understands blood chemistry, a coach that can check over my labs, check my full thyroid panel, check some of those things to make sure I'm not creating any serious metabolic dysfunctions such as hypothyroidism, adrenal insufficiency, hormone imbalances, mood disturbances. I mean, bodybuilding competitions are serious, and I am, like, so embarrassing when I look back for everything I know now. I never ran my blood labs after competing for 4 competitions in a matter of 2 years. And I had a lot of biofeedback that was telling me that I needed to take a look under the hood. But because I hadn't found the pro-metabolic community, I hadn't found any of the people that we surround ourselves with now that were like, that teach us that these are kind of like warning signs. Like, if my check engine light comes on, you bet your britches I take the car into the shop. But my check engine light was on, and I was so driven by aesthetics and my goal, because I'm a competitive person and I do great at anything I put my mind to. And I think sports have a lot of benefit for showing us what we're capable of. But there's a lot of self-sacrifice that can happen when we're so driven for that goal. And I think it's really important to keep health and optimal health in the forefront of that, even if we're driven by goals.
Yeah, like everything you just like was sharing is just like I can totally relate, and I feel like everybody who's listening will be able to relate as well on some level, whether it's not to the full extreme of like competing, like restrictive dieting and like going into like bodybuilding competitions, but the level of like, I feel like so many of us have or is in some way restricting, whether it's like through calories or whether it's through, not eating all kind of macronutrients, all kind of food groups. In some way, people are not nourishing our bodies, and we're lacking in proper nourishment. And I feel like a lot of influencers that we come across on social media don't, like you said, understand how restrictive dieting can impact our hormones, can impact all our like organs like the thyroid and your metabolism. And they just give you like this cookie cutter program, just like low calories. And then like all these kind of people just give like all kind of coaches like this bad representation of like all coaches are just going to give you like some cookie cutter program. So it's just like helping people that come across fitness people to understand that just because, for example, I don't have abs, but it doesn't mean I don't know how to train. I don't know the importance of nutrition. It's just like we often just look at, oh, does this person have, nice stomach and big glutes? This is like that's not, just because you might have that doesn't mean you have the knowledge,
Yes, and that was actually a really big thing for me personally. I would hire coaches because of the way they looked.
Yeah.
And what's so crazy is like I have 17 years of experience and knowledge, and I still fell for all of these things. So like I share this because if I have all this information and still fell deep into the trenches of an eating disorder, like have compassion if you're listening to this. If you have fallen into disordered eating, which 3/4 of women, 75% of women experience some sort of disordered eating, like you're not alone in this. And the sad part is it's gotten so normalized with fitness. Like what happened to me? So like I had done the bodybuilding competitions, I won trophies, gotten a lot of glorification for the dream body that I have while I was binge eating. I would eat like 1,700 calories by 10 a.m. And I would text my coach, what do I do? I eat all my food for the day and it's only 10 a.m. And I just like, no hate on that coach, but I'm just like, why didn't they have a hard conversation with me? I hopped from coach to coach to coach because I wasn't getting the results I wanted. They kept cutting my calories. I finally went to this one coach who I'd known from real life when we both lived in Oregon, and she had become a pro IFBB bodybuilder competitor. She had fake boobs, a great butt, really sweet soul also. And that's why I hired her. I was like, oh, I can trust her. I know her. We used to like work out together back in the day. But you know, what's so interesting is, again, it's the lack of the concept of nutrition periodization and having the courage and the psychology, the knowledge on how to approach the psychology about, like, when I hired that coach, I paid $800 for like a 12-week course, and I was having weight loss resistance. I wasn't getting any results. And instead of having a hard conversation with me, being like, it looks like your relationship with food is really struggling. It looks like you're barely eating your basal metabolic rate. I can't cut your calories any lower. It looks like you're already working out 6 days a week and you're already doing 30 minutes of cardio per day. There was just so many things where I was already at the extremes of the extremes. I was already fasting. I was already eating 2 shakes a day instead of meals. Like, where else can you go? And that's what I was struggling with all the knowledge I had. I was like, I don't understand this. Like, I got lots of results. I'd competed. I'd won. Now all of a sudden my body's not responding to the same exact things that I'd done. And I was coach to coach to coach to coach until I finally found Sam Miller Science, who I am taking his mentorship course right now. And, you know, these coaches are definitely more expensive, like $300 or so a month, but worth every penny. He really helped me dial in my biofeedback, helped me understand I needed to eat more food, helped me understand I needed to reduce my stress on training. And it was really hard being like, wait a minute, what? The only way out of here is by eating more food and doing less exercise. It is the opposite of what you think. And I was all in because for some reason, it made so much sense to me. I was like, that makes so much sense. I've got to take a break. And the longer that I'm out of a deficit, the better my body will respond to one. Okay. And it wasn't easy. I went and I said I hired Sam Miller Science, but I've actually hired 2 other professional eating disorder coaches prior to Sam. So I do think, you know, you asked how to ditch popular diet, fitness beliefs, and how do you recover if you have disordered eating? I think number 1 is knowledge and like learning. Like, you've got to learn enough about nutrition and fitness so you can protect yourself from diet culture, so it can't pull one over on you. But sometimes I think you might need professional help. And and if you want to reach out to me, if you want to find me on Instagram, so maybe we can find a good fit for you. But I went to the Eating Disorder Center. You can look them up. And then I also went to Celeste. I'd have to send you to her Instagram, but she did an amazing 8-week self-development program specifically for competitors. And it was life-changing. And if I had found Celeste in the beginning when I started to compete, I don't even know if it would have gotten as bad or as nasty as it did. So I definitely think there's proper resources and proper coaches out there where you can bodybuild and have a strong mindset, just like you have strong muscles, and you won't have come out with thyroid conditions or maybe some body dysmorphia, because it's going to be really hard to go so lean to then like to go out of that. But still, if you've got the right support and the right tools, I really think this sport isn't as detrimental as it is if you don't have those things. So I really want to make that clear. Bodybuilding is not the worst thing ever. It's just making sure you've got the right mentors and the right mindset going into it. And then if you are struggling with disordered eating or eating disorders, getting professional help is the best, because like my coaches that I kept saying, like I went coach, it's none of their fault. Right? Like none of them are professionals in eating disorders. So they might not even have known that some of these behaviors are questionable or concerning, which is why we need more training. All of us need to like know what to look out for. Well, how do you mention? I mean, to be honest with you, like I said, I've been in the industry for so many years and I've worked at all these gyms. There was always one individual that we were all worried about that would be at like every gym class. And you could tell they were anorexic, like very, 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 you know what I mean? And no one says anything because you just can't. in a way, you know what I mean? And I don't want to trigger anybody, but I just noticed that like we want to respect other individuals to have the freedom to live their lives, especially when you're just at Valley Total Fitness and it's a member that just comes in. She's not paying you. But when you pay a coach, how do we empower coaches to be able to have these more difficult conversations? Because most personal training certifications don't talk a lot about behavior change or motivational interviewing or getting deeper into the client's values and like what drives them. And those are the skill sets that we're missing in the fitness industry to help make sure that when we start a new diet or when we start a new fitness plan, that it's really coming from the right intrinsic motivation, not that external motivation is bad, but if the only reason why we're starting something is because we want to change our body, we're going to have some problems down the road, especially with like long-term motivation in general. But it's just not as fun when you want to do something to change your body, right?
Definitely. I definitely agree. I think there has to be more than just, I want to lose X amount of weight, because because you might get to that goal, but then like, again, you might not be happy with that weight loss. There always has to be something else driving, like just general overall health of like having a better metabolism, supporting the thyroid, just all these aspects, or just using exercise as a way to just relieve stress.
Yeah, I think something, there was like 2 lessons that I wanted to share about like my takeaways from bodybuilding. And the first one I think really resonates to what you were just saying. When I won, I was up there. All the people are cheering. I've got the trophies and the swords. It felt so empty. And I'll never forget it because I had just starved myself and done 90 minutes of cardio every day and all the work that it took to get up there. And this was my 3rd out of my 4th show. It was a natural show, the one that I had won. And I just never forget how weird it felt. And I knew, I was like, well, I knew it. I was like, this was, I don't know, I can't describe it, but it felt so empty. And after years have passed, for me, the takeaway was the art of becoming is truly being successful. So it's not about, once I get to this goal, I'll be happy. It's the happily achieving on the way to the goal. That is success. It's a feeling. It's not an external like, woo, I won this trophy. Like the trophy itself wasn't success. It was the feeling inside of me to be proud of myself, to be proud of where I come from, to be proud of the transformation. Success felt like warm. It felt like love. It felt like gratitude. It felt like having a path with a purpose. So with my clients, we talk a lot about how do you want to feel? Like I hear you. You want to have arm definition. I hear you. You want to have abs. But how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel at that social gathering? How do you want to feel on the weekends? How do you want to feel in the morning when you wake up? Success is a feeling. And my clients, while we do track progress photos, while we do use the scale, some of them, and we do use some of those numbers, success isn't defined by numbers. And the more that we can not define ourselves by how much we weigh, by the size of our pants, I'm like, wow, no trophy, no hot body, no millions of dollars can really bring on that true feeling. And I think we hear a lot about that as in like happiness do. And so that was number 1 lesson for me, was that success is a feeling and it's not given to me because I achieve the goal. I want to make sure that I'm just happily achieving. And that's the same what we were just saying. If we're just working out to achieve the change of our body composition, while you might feel really great, when you get to that goal, there's so much deeper meaning to life, because we're going like, I mean, when I think about my leanest self, and I ask all my clients to do this, go find a photo or find a memory in your head of when you were the leanest version of you. And now think, how did you feel about yourself? In that photo, do you remember how you felt after you first saw it? Most of us, I can't speak for everyone listening, like, oh yeah, I didn't feel that good about my body then either. Oh yeah, it was actually, and now I would love to look like that. We all say that. I'm getting goosebumps because that's what we mean. It's not about our body. It's not. And that's where, while it is really fun to be fit, sure, it's fun to do those things, there's just so much more to it. And I really do think that the fitness industry is grasping these things, like having energy, having libido, not being cold all the time, having stable moods, having a sex drive, like all of those things, that is really the secret sauce. And those were like mostly feelings, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. Like definitely all those markers you just said, it's just like, that's what, because they could get that goal of the weight and looking good, but then like they don't have all those other aspects of like they have cold hands and feet, they don't have a regular menstrual cycle, they struggle to have like, fertility. It's just like there's so many other markers I always, ask, like, so I always strive for like, let's work on better blood sugar levels, managing that stress, like eating regular, making sure you're eating enough. There's like all these markers that eventually when you balance that, you gradually, it's like a little puzzle. You put things into the puzzle, and like things start to like happen. But like, so yeah, you just have
it's
to
kind of like the bank. It's like you're putting in deposits, and it's like instead of always withdrawing. And I think the biggest thing for women to understand is we don't exist on thin air. And the female physiology is very sensitive to stress, very sensitive to inconsistencies with food, and very sensitive to the lack of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And what we have to understand as females is most of the science and most of the research is done on who? Men. And that's just changing slightly and slowly. But this should be a well-known fact. And we're finding these shortcomings in the research, and we're finding these shortcomings in the fitness industry. And there really is a large movement growing with this kind of conversation that we're having.
Definitely. I'm glad you like brought up how female physiology is a lot more, it's different, it's sensitive, and we're not like small versions of men. Like we don't have, because I had Elisa video on the podcast like a while ago, and she was like talking about how obviously we don't have the same kind of, men don't have cycles, so like they can just do the same thing day in, day out, and it's not going to get affected by it. If we change in certain aspects of our cycle, our food intake, or we just put too much stress, then the whole kind of cycle is going to get impacted. So yeah, it's important. I'm glad that you raised that, because I feel like we forget that.
We do. And like intermittent fasting, most of the research is done on men. And so while we might see there's some benefits, there's a lot of individuals who should not be doing that. And that's not always addressed enough. Like context is so important. So very important. Do you want to talk about the popular fitness myths? Yeah, because I think those tie into the bodybuilding world so much. I picked 3 to talk about. While there's a lot, I'm sure your listeners could add in on what their fitness myths are. The first one I want to talk about is the concept of no pain, no gain. That's huge in bodybuilding. They're all about sacrifice. I don't know. Like, they're not wrong. To achieve any goal, we do need to make some sacrifices. They're not wrong, right? I think what's most important to understand is, like, first off, exercise can be intense, and exercise on some level, some soreness may occur, but we never want to confuse soreness or like the sensation you get when you're working out with pain. It's not the same thing. So exercise actually shouldn't be painful. They're very different. And so, pain is neither a requirement or a normal response for a workout. I think that's really important. Now, I think no pain, no gain sounds cool. And I think what's important is maybe that's trying to advocate or bring up the discipline and bring up the motivation to like not quit. I think, when I give that phrase some leeway there. But I think it's really important we're going to talk about, like, we need to learn how to listen to our body. Well, some of my clients, if we feel like we have to get in our walk today, I have to get my walk in, but my calf keeps cramping, or I'm not really feeling so well. There's like all these little signs that you're like, you can just walk tomorrow. I tell my clients, you don't earn the right to exercise. You have to earn the right to exercise. Like, if you haven't eaten well, if you haven't slept well, or your body's not really feeling so good, then it's actually okay to not train. But it's your body is just telling you, like, I need something different. I need some attention. And it's really important to not kind of soldier through or push through some of those. And when you're competing, you do, because you have a goal. You're going to be on the stage. That's what I did. I didn't want to I'd already registered, you already spent a ton of money, and I wanted to make sure I looked like I belonged up there. I had torn my bicep tendon a couple months prior. I was dealing with an SIQL like hip issue. I could deadlift, I could squat, I could use the stair climber, but to like bend over and pick up my bag to leave, nope. Like to wash dishes, I could like barely do the daily stuff. I was in so much pain, but I only cared about aesthetics. And I didn't go to a physical therapist. I didn't go to a chiropractor, probably because I didn't want to find out, because I just didn't want to stop. And that's the issue. No pain, no gain. That doesn't work. And eventually it'll catch up with you.
100%.
Yeah. And so the second one, the more exercise, the better. And that goes a lot into bodybuilding too. There's, two things with body. I think the biggest goal with bodybuilders, or when you want to become a bodybuilder, is you want to get buff. You want to grow some muscles, right? That's, I think, what a lot of people think of. And hypertrophy, to gain muscle size, you need several variables, but the two main things are going to be intensity and volume. So lots of it and intense of it. So the more exercise, the better can make sense when you have specific goals and you worked yourself up to get there, right? But then when we were revisiting where I was a couple years ago, at the end of 2020, I was barely eating my basal metabolic rate. Like if I ate any less, I wasn't eating enough that my body needed to survive, just baseline functions. And I was already working out 6 days a week. And there's only 7 days in a week. So like how many, and so to what point do you keep going? So it's really important to understand there's a limited benefit to anything, and that includes exercise. And so while it's great to do 60, maybe up to 90 minutes of activity daily, the more isn't always better. And we can end up developing overuse injuries, stress factors, tendonitis, bursitis, and joint issues. And especially if you're someone like me who loves to be active and all of a sudden you can't be active at all, it's like your worst nightmare. So it's really important. So like I said, the no pain, no gain, and more exercise isn't always better. And it's important to make sure that we're finding that minimum effective dose. My clients are always like, should I do more? And I'm like, no, everything is working. We always want to do the minimum effective dose, which is, it's hard because if it's not, feels like it's restrictive enough, it doesn't feel like it's hard enough, then they're a little concerned.
Yeah. And I feel like a good way to, I'm sure you know this, but like to measure if you're doing too much exercise is to like test your basal body temperature to see if what you've done has decreased your temperature, and if it has, and you've obviously exerted yourself too much, and if you haven't had the nourishing meal after, like the post-workout, if it's not been nourishing, then you obviously have to like have a better nourishing meal.
Yeah. You did a great post about that, like how to tell if your workout's working for you. And there's a lot of things that you can include it. I think there's like maybe 8 signs. One of them is also feeling really tired, like you need a nap right after your workout. And I recently felt that recently, and I was pretty sad about it. There's a couple of things if you're really into the pro-metabolic or like metabolic world and you're already doing your basal temp. I have a little like decision tree I like to employ for myself before I work out, just to make sure that my metabolism's already at a good place. Because if I'm not at a good place, then we know that exercise is just going to add to that stress bucket, and my body, my physiology is not going to get the benefit of it. And I think that's the hard part when you're really active like me, but you have to make that hard game decision. So, I check my basal temp. If it's already low upon waking up, then that's a sign. I'm like, okay. And then if I got 7 hours of sleep or more, and my basal temp is okay, then I allow myself to train more on like my more intense training days. If my basal temp was low and I didn't sleep that well, but I really feel like moving, then that's like a core mobility day. And I don't mean like crazy core exercises, maybe a little light planks, nothing extreme, because movement is healing, but I just want to make sure it's nothing that's going to tax my physiology. So some light stretching, some maybe dead bugs, and some core activation stuff for my back injury, not skipping on all those injury exercises. And that seems to really help. And then also noticing how I feel after my sessions. I think when you have this history of compulsive exercise, you kind of want to ignore the signs that if it's because you just want to be able to do what you want to do. You want to be able to train, you want to be able to like work out hard. And that's me. And I know there's some other people like Kitty in our community that love to work out really hard. And I think Meg Lanston as well. So we have to be very, very conscientious of that. That's okay that we're driven to be active, but we just want to make sure we have a couple parameters, or you can come up with your own decision tree if you're listening. Like, what are some factors that you're really focusing on, and making sure that those give you a green light before training. But then also not babying yourself. And if it feels like you really want to get a movement in, then that's okay too. We just want to make sure that it's gentle movement, and maybe making sure that you have someone help clarify with you what gentle movement is for you.
Yeah, definitely agree, 100%.
I had one more fitness myth.
Go ahead.
Eat 1,200 calories a day. One, it's pretty brutal. And, some people say it came from MyFitnessPal, but actually came from over almost 100 years ago. I forget the original doctor that wrote the book about it, but I just read a post about it from one of my favorite coaches. It was quite interesting, the history of where this 1,200 calorie number came from. But what I think is really important to understand is that 1,200 to 1,400 calories is the intake for a toddler, a young child, 4 to 8 years old. Some of us know that, but I don't think a lot of us knew that. So females ages 31 to 50, depending on their activity level, can require somewhere between 1,800, 2,000, 2,400 calories or more. And that's eating enough to fuel the body is so crucial. And I have clients, I'm just so grateful. All of them are on board with me. And it's definitely lots of conversations, again, of like the psychology. But I mean, for one, I had a client who came to me. She's 240 pounds. She would like to be down to 180, but she was eating 1,700 calories when we started working together. She wasn't working out much. She was doing some walking with the dog. So there was all these variables that we can start to incorporate. I feel like when people feel like they want to lose weight and they're not happy with their body, they automatically just cut calories. And there's so many other variables because food is good. Why do you want to like take that away from? I know you don't. You just feel like that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
So thank goodness my client Katie, and she wouldn't mind me using her name. Just so proud of her. Listened, and we're about 7 months into our coaching. She is eating 2,600 calories, sometimes more, sometimes less, 2,400 to 2,700 calories per day. So it's almost 1,000 calories more. The scale fluctuates between 234 and 236. So she's lost a little bit of weight. We've gotten her from no workouts to doing 3 per week, very consistent, sometimes 4, but she's got kids, she homeschools, you know how it is. But she's very consistent. Everything we're doing is Operation Steady is like the name of her program, and she's just like, for the first time, I'm in charge of my fitness program and I'm in charge of nutrition instead of the program being in charge. Mm-hmm. And that was really amazing. And she asked me, she's like, am I doing this wrong? Like, she just saw the lowest scale weight she's seen since working together, and she's eating more food than she's ever eaten. Now, this might not always happen when we go through the process of what we call a reverse diet, and this is nutrition periodization. But her mind is blown. We are preparing to take her into a fat loss phase come mid-January. And our initial deficit will be around 2,300 calories. So the amount of food flexibility, the amount of food she can eat while in a deficit is incredible. And this is what can change the entire game of the dieting industry if we just took the longer route. And it's not easy. She came to me wanting to lose weight. And here we are 7 months into working together. And while she might have seen a little bit, if we're so antsy to get that, then we're only in our own way. Mm-hmm. And Katie had followed me for months before hiring me. She bought books that I recommended. She was really the dream client. She was already literally doing all of her homework. So when she hired me, when we look at the stages of change, she was well into that model of change. She was well into it, past pre-contemplation, a lot of that. So it was really, this is all the case by case basis, but it really, this is kind of a new concept for me as a coach. Like I said, I just learned about nutrition periodization last year. So to have my clients come to me, hire me for weight loss, trust me to go through a reverse diet. I've got one client who's also doing fantastic on it. And she's eating almost 3,000 calories a day. She's 22 years old, totally different individual compared to the last client. And she's just blowing her own mind. She's never eaten this much food in her life. And she dealt with constant hunger issues. She was missing her period every third period or so when she started working with me. And I wasn't really as versed as I am now. I've taken a lot more education courses to have a better understanding of this. But again, she's 22, like I said, and she does have dreams of having kids with her boyfriend, soon to be fiance. So she put all of her aesthetic goals aside and was like, I actually understand how important my fertility is and my period is. And now she's also a personal trainer and like creating her own little legacy. And it's truly incredible to see this impact, like the waves. And my client Katie, I spoke about, when she hangs out with her sister, with her mom, like she's no longer sucked into diet talk, or she's just they're so empowered and they're so in charge, and they're not in charge, feeling autonomy, I guess is what I was trying to say, that it really lights me up. And I think that that's kind of what we said earlier, like how do people ditch popular diet and fitness beliefs, and how do you recover from disordered eating? It's knowledge. I said that, but like real talk, there's a lot of wellness and fitness influencers out there that have highly disordered relationship with food on their own. And they promote their own disordered beliefs as wellness. And like, I was that person, like that was me. I'm not even calling out anyone else besides old self. I like go through my old content, had to hide it, had to hide some of my old blogs. It was like, it's actually quite embarrassing. If you find some old stuff, let me know. But I'm still like, oh my gosh, I've changed and grown so much in my strategies. So I want to forgive myself. And then also say, like, my biggest tips on how to avoid bad fitness advice. If you're interested in working with someone, drop into their DMs, ask them about their education, and ask them about like, hey, like you've got letters behind your name. What do those mean? Tell me more. Like it's really awesome to have a conversation about people's credentials. You might not know what it means, but it's kind of like when you're looking to buy a vacuum cleaner or something, you're going to like look at the different specs to like compare. And I think the best thing is to make sure when they are teaching you new things, whoever you're working with, it isn't always slanted to sell you something. Mm-hmm. If everything ends up in like a glute band or like a supplement, they might just want your money and want to fill your head with whatever convinces you to buy their products. While I believe in supplements like gelatin, collagen, I no longer have an affiliate link. I'm not against, I actually like send them to give them like Jessica's or Amanda's or any of these people. The Strong Sisters, I use their code a lot. I'm just like, right now, my personal business, I don't want to be affiliated with any company because I was with the MLM and I felt like I was pushing products onto people, and no product, no supplement is game changer. Mm-hmm. You are the game changer. For sure. And I think that's my biggest concern. People are like, oh, I've got to go on this. My gut health is off. So I'm going to like spend all this money on all these things. And I personally fell into that as well with a naturopath, when there was just so many of the mastering the basics of digestion I wasn't doing, like chewing enough, taking some deep breaths, making sure I'm not slouching after eating. And there's just so many of the basics that we're not mastering before we think that we have to do. And that's what I mean. Like the more educated you are, like you probably don't need a candida cleanse. And if it hasn't been diagnosed by 3 different ways, then they actually don't know if you have candida. And that's like just something to be really, and then because the issue with candida is what happens. They put you on a low carb, no carb diet. Like, again, it's like very problematic. And so I think the last thing I wanted to say about like how to kind of navigate the bad fitness advice, besides wary if they're trying to sell you stuff and asking about their credentials, ask, why am I doing this? How does this work? What's happening inside of my body to promote these changes? How will this help me achieve my goals faster while keeping me safe and healthy? Can you teach me this in another way so I firmly understand it? And I have my clients ask me that last one about like reverse dieting, nutrition periodization. Wait. You say I have to eat more food and work out less? Can you explain that to me in another way so that makes sense? Yes, I can, right? Ideally, any coach will be able to meet you where you're at and be able to fine tune and explain what they're trying. There should always be a why. Why am I doing this exercise? because I saw it on YouTube and it looked cool, right? That's not the answer we want. And I'm assuming most coaches wouldn't do that. But bottom line, if something feels off, triggering, or harmful to you, that we just like unfollow the account or just start asking more questions. So those are my biggest tips for like how to avoid fitness advice, because it's rough out there.
Yeah, I love that. I love those tips though. Those like questions you should ask. Definitely, I would recommend like anyone to just ask themselves those questions. Like, they're just so, yeah, I just feel like we need to be more knowledgeable or more open to be asking questions and not just like going for anything and doing anything without fully understanding the effects something's doing and knowing why you want to do something. I think, yeah, those questions.
It's hard to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the doctor's office, like when you want to ask questions about that or get a second opinion. And even when I was going from, I can't even tell you how many coaches I've gone through, especially when I was competing. And I think I'm like, I must be uncoachable. But part of me is like learning that I'm just advocating for myself and just trying to find the right fit, just like dating. It's like, you don't want to settle that way. You don't want to, and like coach relationship is very similar. So I think, yeah, just like when you go to the doctor, you want to ask lots of questions. Sometimes you have to be prepared. And sometimes, I mean, I am as passionate and fiery, but then I like go blank when I'm at the doctor's. I'm like, like kind of forget what I wanted to say. Or when I get home, I'm like, oh, I should have asked this or whatever. So I feel like we have to be compassionate with ourselves. And I think, again, what I said in the very beginning is celebrate contrast. Like, okay, well, I didn't like this past experience with this coach. I know that much. So then what can I look for next time to make sure that I don't fall for that again, or I don't make sure I ask a better question next time, that type of thing. So we always implement our intentions. If this happens, then I'll do that. So, you know, sometimes we all learn the hard way. Yeah. Like by experiencing things you don't like, eventually you'll figure out what you do like.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think it's important to like write questions that you want to ask someone, your doctor or coach, whatever. The more you ask, the better. Like, even if it is like okay, no question is going to be stupid, but like, you know, this is your life. You need to know as much as you can.
I love it when my clients ask me questions. Because I love it so much.
You don't want to be a coach for the rest of your life. You're going to sign up for a period of time, and then like the whole point of a coach is to teach you everything. So then you can just leave them and be like, I don't need you anymore. I can
go on your own, right? Yeah. And so like with my clients, like we have 3 kind of phases we work through. Like the onboarding phase where we've got to like unlearn a lot and relearn a lot. And that's like an 8-week process. And then I have other coaching levels. And so when my clients are in a maintenance mode, like where they're going to be in maintenance for probably 3 to 6 months, we're really just in that, like, I feel like people don't celebrate maintenance. Like, oh, my goal is to get to maintenance. I'm just like, maintenance is a huge progress flex. Like if you were doing something that you can maintain with whether you travel, whether you have a stressful week or not, this is huge, because most people come to me with an up and down, a yo-yo history. Mm-hmm. But my point is, when I offer my client, I have a drop down rate, which is like much cheaper for like when we're in those zones. So then my clients can save money, and we do once a month check-in instead of weekly check-ins. They'll have access to their workouts. It's like a little less money because they're just in the groove. And then when we have a projected time where we might circle back and go into a fat loss phase is when they come back around, upgrade the training, and then we're back to more like our weekly coaching calls and more of that support necessary. And that's kind of a new tweak I've done, because like you said, we don't really want, I don't know about every coach, but I personally don't want to have client. I mean, I have one client I've had for 4 years, and I would be happy to train her for the rest of our lives, but she's a cyclocross athlete. So really awesome sports, and we've just gotten better and better. So that's why she's still with me. She's got big goals. But other clients, like it's about a year or so where we can kind of get all the information in. And ideally, if I've done my job well, it's like I send you off like a mama bird sending her baby birds from the nest. And that's like my other client who's now, I mean, she says she'll probably always have me as a coach, but now she's a personal trainer. Now now she's teaching me stuff too, right? So it's super neat. So ideally, you don't have a coach forever. I do think there's a purpose in having a coach. I'll choose to always have a coach, but it's mostly for that accountability, that extra support. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having a coach forever, but you're right. Ideally, we don't need one forever. Ideally, you find a coach that really, like Amanda, Hormone Healing RD is what I love about her so much. If she's one-on-one with me, she just empowers me. She wants me to be eating food, not supplements. There's just so much about working with her that feels like how when I work with my clients that I really appreciate about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to make sure when we're having conversations with clients that they have an ideal like timeline of how long, what it looks like. So many people are like, well, how long will it be till I get these results? How long will it be until I start feeling better? Or when do you think we'll go into a fat loss phase? And I honestly never know those answers ever. I never have like a super duper plan. Like, well, January 4th, we will begin. Like, no, hun. I said, like, I know they want more, and but every week we do those check-ins. Like I said, how's your sleep? How's your energy? How's your digestion? I just made a post about biofeedback, work life, social life. All of these things have to be in check before it's the right time to maybe go into a fat loss phase. Or a lot of us just set goals that it's just so beautiful when you're not in a fat loss phase. All the other things that you can focus on, like one of my clients wants to be more creative. So 3 days a week, we're making sure she's crafting. Well, she's also doing 3 workouts a week and got her steps down. But like once we've mastered these basic habits, where wellness is not just the gym and what we're eating. I'm making sure my clients are getting creative. I'm making sure that they're going outside and getting some sunlight. There's just so many things that we want to make sure that are on par. And that, again, it's the feeling. They're like, well, I'm feeling really good. And guess what? We're not on a diet. Not at all. A lot of them are realizing that they're not overeating at these social events, or they're able to like travel and feel okay because, again, they're not restricting themselves anymore. And they're just like nourishing themselves. So they're able to eat until they're satisfied and not overeat and then feel sick. It's just really neat watching what unfolds. Not that it's not uncomfortable or difficult for all of them. And for me, I'm also on this journey with all of them too, right? And I think that's something really to celebrate, to embrace the discomfort, but discomfort doesn't equal unhappiness. One more time, discomfort doesn't equal, it doesn't, they're not the same thing. And I think that's the biggest gift we can give to ourselves if we're dealing with hormonal imbalances or a little bit of biofeedback that's not comfortable. Jessica Ash Wellness talks a lot about that too, chasing symptoms, just making sure that we're just focusing on, well, I am nourishing myself, I'm prioritizing sleep, I'm getting sunlight, I'm taking my beef liver, I'm taking my oysters, I'm doing all these things, I'm doing my raw carrot salad. It's kind of patting yourself on the back, being like, I'm doing all these things, I get my steps in. I have to be on, there's no doubt about it that I'm on my healing journey and that I trust my body and like all of these things. So I think it's just really important to honor the discomfort and just try to make sure that that's not equaling unhappiness. Because that's, I think, the biggest champion for yourself you can do.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And I just want to touch on like the whole point of like the whole reverse dieting. I feel like obviously you said like it's the whole point of like eating more calories, especially if you've been someone who has been following restrictive dieting, low calories. A lot of people they won't lose weight, and they'll come to a coach and be like, they'll expect to just have lower calories because they think, oh, I can't lose weight on 1,400, that means I'm gonna have to go even lower, 1,200, 800, whatever. But I feel like it all comes back down to restoring the metabolism. So obviously to do that, to improve those markers, to support the thyroid, we need to be eating more calories. And then that's gonna take some time. So once you
if you're eating that low of food, you want to systematically and slowly and progressively, there is a science to it. Because ideally, we don't put on a lot of excess body fat, right? Because excess body fat, body fat's good. And like a lot of I needed it for my hormone rebalance is exactly what she needed. We don't want excess, especially if we're going to want to diet down again. And in competition worlds, that is the big thing. Is like, yes, I want to go into off season. Yes, I want to replenish my body, but eventually I'm going to run a diet back down. So I'm not going to want to like overdo it. So it's really important to find that balance. For me in my journey, I hadn't heard about reverse dieting yet. And I wasn't, because it doesn't have to involve tracking food by any means. Some clients don't want to track food. You do not have to track food to do a reverse diet. That's really important to understand. I personally needed to take a break from tracking. So when I went through my disordered eating and eating disorder recovery journey, I was all in. I gained some serious weight from that. serious weight to me. And part of me regretted that journey as I learned more about, like, my clients aren't doing what I did. And that's okay. I just have to forgive myself for my past experience, because that was what was appropriate for me, because I'd been tracking and so restrictive for so many years that I just had to stop weighing and doing it and just eat whatever I needed to eat. And I didn't gain the weight very fast. There was a lot of factors that went into the weight gain, but I think that was part of I'd gotten off the IUD as well. I knew the Mirena was contributing to some of these issues. So I got the IUD out, and that's when I also started working with the pro-metabolic community and starting to nourish myself. I took the Fully Nourished course from Jessica Ash Wellness before I started working with Amanda. And all of these things were really helpful, especially just Jessica and how much she talks about safety weight. Mm-hmm. And she talks about why some women need to gain weight before they lose weight. I mean, all of that. If I could ever just like hug Jessica Ash Wellness, I'm sure there's probably hundreds of thousands of us that feel that way, but that woman in itself, I just love how sassy and funny she is too. So she's helped me out tremendously in kind of accepting where I'm at. And I think it's just important to go slow and strategic when you do add your food back in. And that might be really hard to do if you're dealing with disordered or eating disorder behavior. So again, I'm not trained in any of these things, which is why I think it's important to make sure you are working with a professional who can help guide you through your own individual recovery and what will work best for you. Because I actually, when I went to the Eating Disorder Center, they have therapy or they have a coach. So they kind of have two options. And I went the coaching route because coaching is like ready to move forward. Mm-hmm. Therapy is like, keep talking about it. And I was like, I'm good. I've like, not that could be a good route for somebody. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know what route will be best for others, but I went to coach. Her name's Giovanni, and she is amazing. I see her this Thursday. And so I love her because she's still like, when I choose my foods, I want to make sure that it's pasture raised, organic, like quality of animal products is really high for me. And in some individuals that might look as like orthorexia. Mm-hmm. And my eating disorder therapist understands the context of now I have her checking labels because she was dealing with lots of digestive stuff, and she was going to specialist. So she's helping me with my eating disorder and body image stuff. I have her making homemade gummies and the adrenal elixir with aloe vera, and guys, she's feeling better. So it's like this beautiful balance of like, orthorexia is a very real concern thing, but it's important to find someone who can really get to know you and support you on your journey. And that's what I'm so grateful for the individuals that I found, because sometimes, on the very beginning, she said, you might have to quit your job. Like, you might not be able to be into fitness. You might have to rebrand. Like, you might have to change Making Me Fit. Like, I was like, what? Like, I can't see myself doing anything else than fitness. I can't. Making Me Fit, I love my brand. Like, she said, you might. She didn't say you have to. But I just like started thinking, like, what if happened if I got hospitalized? What if I went into an eating disorder hospital? What would that have been like for me? I don't know. I just think it's important to make sure, just like coaching, you interview and you find the options of, and I'm just really grateful I went the coaching route because it's very future moving forward instead of continuing to talk about it.
I'd like you to share those links. So I can put it in the show notes if anyone.
Yeah.
I think it'll be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely. I think everything you said, I feel like if you're going through eating disorders or whatever you're trying to do, I feel like you need like a good support system. I feel like if you're in that frame of mind, it's hard to just do things on your own because there's always going to be that voice that's like,
yeah. I'm still at that place. I'm unable to fully trust myself. And I want to trust myself, but that's kind of why you need someone in your court to bounce ideas off of and just to kind of hold you accountable with some of the thoughts you're having. Like, oh, I really want to exercise today. Why? Because I just feel so much better afterwards. I sleep so much better. Ding, ding, ding. Right? But if I really want to exercise today, why? Because I ate a lot of brownies yesterday and I feel like garbage. Right? Warning, right? So it's really important to make sure we have a coach to help us with that. And I think the other way is, how else do we unlearn to relearn? There's another really great book. I could send you the Intuitive Eating book. Don't remember the authors, but that one,
I had her on my podcast as well.
I would have died, like starstruck died. Pretty cool. So that book changed my life, just understanding the principles of intuitive eating. And And that was really helpful too in my journey. And I think just most importantly, improving my self-esteem. I had to redefine what being healthy was. I had to redefine what health was. But when I learned about it was my self-esteem, because how I feel about myself is the root of how I behave and how I treat myself. I had to remove the self-harming behaviors. And honestly, a lot of the eating disorder stuff has a lot to do with childhood trauma that I'm still processing. And those were the coping mechanisms that I had done. I could control my food, I could control my exercise, and I could exercise and feel better and avoid the feelings of the trauma. And now that I'm not suppressing the feelings, it has been extremely hard. And I think we don't talk, and the pro-metabolic community does, but trauma and unresolved trauma impacts our health. We're realizing more and more, especially if you read the book, The Body Keeps Score. Even my chiropractor asked me if I'd read that book because she sees what she's treating in the bodies is trauma stored in the body. And so I think it's really important to, I removed the self-harming behaviors, and that's when it illuminated there was some serious, deeper stuff going on. And I think it's really okay. But the more awareness I had over my feelings and the more responsibility I took, my decisions are coming more and more from dignity, and they're coming from self-respect, which makes me want to cry because it's really beautiful. And I think that's the most important thing that we want from as a coach, or like when we want to become healthy, you want to be doing it from dignity. You want to be doing it from a place of self-respect. So I think that's the biggest thing. And I think therapy, I'm glad it's getting less and less taboo. It's like cool. I talked about being in therapy all the time. I'm like, I have 3 therapists. It's amazing. I love all of them. They're all different. Actually, I only have 2. But the last thing I wanted to touch base on was about what body neutral fitness is. And that was our last question. Body neutral fitness is a little different than body positivity, right? Body positivity, I'm not against it by any means, but it didn't really resonate with where I was and what I wanted to do. But body neutral fitness in particular, or body neutral, is just about celebrating what your body is capable of doing. Because for me, I felt like body positivity, I love my body, that doesn't feel true to me. I mean, I'm so grateful for all the things she does for me. That feels true to me. And I'm working on improving my body image, and all the research, it shows that cultivating body appreciation is how we have a better body image. So it's not weight loss that's going to get that. And that's what we talked about in our previous thing when we looked at our skinniest or most leanest self and we still didn't like that self. That's how we know. The body image doesn't have to do with what I look like. It has to do with how I feel about myself in my head. And the more that we cultivate appreciation, oh my gosh, I can go up and down the stairs. That's incredible. I mean, we take it for granted, but it really is. I fight gravity all day long. I'm freaking incredible. Or my cat just got up here on the table. If I didn't have a body, I couldn't pet my pets. I can't exist in the world. It's so, here he is. He wants to make a guest appearance. But it can just be, instead of aesthetics being the main intention, because I definitely have clients with aesthetic goals. We don't push those aside. It's super okay to want to lose weight. It's super okay to want to have big, strong muscles. I'm not against any of that, but we just don't want it to be the main intention. The focus is more on how we want to feel and cultivating that positive body image through developing the body appreciation. And it's so easy to fall into the trap of pointing out what you're insecure about or hearing someone else do the same. And that's why, this conversation is so important, because we have to at least notice when we're doing it and how it makes us feel. And then we just have to redirect the conversation to another topic. It's literally just reframing, retraining, because even my husband has diet culture influences, the men in our lives do, your family does. But body neutral fitness is about nourishing your body with all the foods, with the vitamins, with the nutrients you need, not depriving yourself of delicious treats. We do not engage in restrictive dieting behaviors in the body neutral world. And exercise is not meant to be a punishment. If your body needs a rest day, then we give it a rest day. If your body needs weeks of rest days, which can be really hard. One of my clients has chronic disease. She's been really sick, dealing with some flare-ups. And then now she's not working out. She's struggling with allowing herself to eat and giving that permission. There's so much of this is deeply ingrained. And so I think it's just been really hard for her to give herself permission to give these rest days. because she's like, oh, I need to exercise so I can earn my right to eat this food. And so it's so much more than that. And she's slowly understanding that we're just focusing on these little behaviors that have nothing to do with food and exercise. And then she's like, oh, I'm still achieving health and wellness. I was like, yes, like that's what I love about when we expand coaching to not just the workouts and not just food. Like when my clients are in seasons of life like she is, we still work on gratitude. We still work on making sure she eats breakfast. So there's still things that she can progress towards and still work towards and not feel like everything is falling apart now because I'm really sick. So that makes sense. And also as a business, like I don't lose clients that way because we're working on so many other things. I have 2 clients that haven't worked out in months, but there's all these other things that we're working on that they have no problem continuing to invest in the coaching because there's so many other areas that we're working on. And I think that's what's so cool about body neutral fitness is it's really about like having fun gets more done. And that's one of my favorite lines. And that's been a mechanism for a while within my business because I've always have lots of energy and I'm hyper and I've loved fitness. I just love fitness. So my clients are like, you what? I'm like, woo! Like literally workout is my party. It's my favorite thing to do. And so how can I channel that into my clients? How can I help them feel like this is a gift? This isn't a chore. And like by making it more fun, you can definitely get more done that way. So I think that's what's really cool about body neutral fitness. You guys can Google it, look it up. There's lots of people that do body neutral fitness. I think it's important to make sure that we fill our feeds with diverse body types and with diverse coaches that have a lot of different approaches. And that's the best way, like I said, when you're shopping for a vacuum cleaner, shopping for something, you want to make sure you have all these different options and can kind of compare specs. And so diversifying your feed is another really good way to kind of help break free from some of those disordered behaviors. I mean, I literally had to unfollow and refollow and change up a lot of that. So my social network is a healing place and not a triggering place for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely had to unfollow a lot of people and like follow other people who I was, like in the pro-metabolic community and all people you're trying to learn more about. So and just to become the person you want to be. So you're following all these kind of people. But yeah, like you said, I feel like not just focusing on the nutrition or the exercise, but there's a lot of holistic kind of things we have to look at because stress can come in different ways. So I feel like just looking at like even the simple, just going on a walk and making sure you have like breakfast. So it's not just like just focus on like, are you eating enough calories, but just like simple things that are probably in the realm of like food and exercise, but keeping them really simple of like getting this stuff like, are you like measuring your body temperature? Are you like checking your pulse? Are you like focusing on your sleep? What's your sleep hygiene routine like? Are you taking time to just do nothing and just sit in peace?
The bedtime routine is so under. Yeah. I mean, a lot of my clients focus on it and they realize that like how much better it feels when they get in the grooves, reading more, less screen time, right? All of those habits. And that's what I love about the app that I use called Trainerize. It like puts them on their calendar, like their little daily habits so they can check it off. And that we're really like habits are what create routine. And routine is what creates consistency. And consistency is what creates results. And so it's just so important to master the basics. And I think I say that a lot. And like when I see like 75 hard challenges, I'm like, nope, just work on mastering the basics because that's hard enough. You don't need to make anything else harder. It's like all these challenges. I'm like, well, if you need a challenge to motivate you, all right. But eventually that wears off. Right? So it's important to get these intrinsic motivations, which typically are, I want to feel better. Like you might think you want to look a certain way, but it literally comes down to how you want to feel with your kids or all of that. So I think it's just asking yourself the tough questions, maybe going to therapy if you need it. They'll also help them. They'll ask you the tough questions. Ask your coach or potential coach the tough questions and don't be ashamed. And I've fired coaches recently that are still great coaches, but I'm like, this isn't a good fit for me. That's hard to do. And then also to feel okay knowing that it's all right to ask for what you're asking for. And it's okay that if you're not getting the support from one individual, that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. And it's okay to continue seeking out support from someone else. And I think just always having an open conversation, open dialogue with your coaches, because they're humans too. I forgive all my past coaches, and like they're all humans, right? And they're all beautiful, wonderful humans that we're all just trying our best. And like I said, I mean, I had no idea about nutrition periodization. I wish we talked more about it in certifications. I think a lot of coaches could benefit from understanding the concept of reverse dieting, maintenance, and those are like the 3 phases. It's like fat loss phase, maintenance phase, and a reverse or like a build phase. And Sam Miller Science calls them like burn, break, and build. But I'm sure he's like trademarked those terms. But yeah, if you want to check out Sam Miller Science is another great person, check out his podcast. He's extremely knowledgeable and helps empower individuals how to ask questions for their doctors, how to ask informed questions for their coaches, and also great resources for other coaches too. So those are, I mean, that's what I'm all about. I like to refer other people, create a little network, because it's literally the only way we're going to make it through this if we have a strong support team and we all support each other. And I just really appreciate you bringing me on to this podcast, and we got to talk about some of these really important topics. And I hope the messages get to people, to the right people who need to hear them, especially with this holiday season, and could really free themselves from a lot of the stress, unnecessary stress that happens around the holidays.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a great way to like end the podcast with like those tips and those like actionable stuff that they could do